The boarding gate fell completely silent as the airline attendant gently removed the gold-colored boarding pass from the hands of a quiet single father and handed it to a sharply dressed millionaire who insisted he deserved the premium seat more. Travelers glanced up for only a second before returning to their phones, assuming the humble father would simply accept the decision. He did. He picked up his worn backpack, smiled at his little daughter, and quietly walked toward the back of the boarding line. No one realized that within 5 minutes, airport security would rush onto the aircraft, the captain would order every passenger to evacuate immediately, and the very people who looked down on that father would discover that his calm decision had just saved every life on board. Before this unforgettable story begins, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire if you believe kindness, humility, and second chances still matter in today's world. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that inspire millions. It was a bright, beautiful spring morning, and sunlight poured through the massive windows of Westbridge International Airport. Families laughed while waiting for vacations, business travelers hurried toward departure gates, and children watched airplanes taxi across the runway with excitement. Among the crowd walked 38-year-old Malcolm Hayes, carrying a faded backpack over one shoulder while holding the tiny hand of his 7-year-old daughter, Naomi. They did not wear expensive clothes or luxury watches. Malcolm's jacket had been carefully repaired several times, and Naomi's backpack carried colorful patches she had proudly sewn on herself. They looked like an ordinary father and daughter, yet there was something peaceful about them that made strangers smile without knowing why. 3 years earlier, Malcolm had lost his wife to a sudden illness. Her passing shattered his world, but instead of allowing grief to harden his heart, he devoted every moment to raising Naomi with love, honesty, and courage. He worked as an aviation safety consultant, traveling only when absolutely necessary so he could spend as much time as possible with his daughter. Unknown to nearly everyone around him, Malcolm had become one of the country's most respected independent aviation investigators. Airlines quietly hired him whenever they needed expert evaluations after safety incidents, but confidentiality agreements kept his identity out of newspapers and television interviews. He preferred living quietly rather than seeking recognition. That morning they were flying to attend an aviation conference where Malcolm had been invited to present new recommendations designed to improve passenger safety across the industry. Naomi was thrilled because it would be her first chance to see her father receive an award recognizing years of life-saving work. Malcolm had surprised her with VIP seats using reward miles he had saved for nearly 2 years, hoping to make the trip feel special after everything they had been through. As boarding began, Malcolm and Naomi approached the gate with excitement. The airline attendant scanned their boarding passes and smiled warmly before suddenly receiving a call from another employee. A few moments later, an impatient businessman named Gregory Ashford approached carrying designer luggage, speaking loudly about his executive status and expensive schedule. His original premium seat had apparently been changed because of a booking issue, and he demanded immediate compensation. Instead of offering another solution, an inexperienced supervisor made a terrible decision. Malcolm's VIP seats were reassigned to Gregory simply because Malcolm appeared cooperative and unlikely to argue. Malcolm looked briefly at Naomi. She had been looking forward to sitting beside the window near the front of the aircraft. For just a moment disappointment filled her eyes, but Malcolm gently squeezed her hand and reminded her that where they sat would never matter as much as arriving safely together. Naomi smiled, nodded bravely, and followed her father toward the back of the plane without complaining. Several nearby passengers silently judged Malcolm. Some assumed he could not afford premium travel anyway. Others believed wealthy customers deserved better treatment. Gregory proudly settled into the luxurious seat without even acknowledging the sacrifice someone else had made for him. As passengers continued boarding under the bright midday sun outside, Malcolm noticed something unusual while placing his backpack beneath the seat. Through one of the cabin windows he could clearly see a maintenance panel near the aircraft's left engine that appeared slightly unsecured. Years of aviation inspections had trained his eyes to notice details others overlooked. He calmly stood, informed a flight attendant that something outside deserved immediate attention, and politely requested the captain receive the message before departure. At first, several passengers rolled their eyes. Some whispered that nervous travelers always imagined problems before flights. Gregory laughed confidently, believing the delay would make him late for an important business meeting. Fortunately, the senior flight attendant recognized Malcolm's calm professionalism. Instead of dismissing his concern, she immediately contacted the cockpit. The captain paused departure procedures. Ground engineers were called. Within minutes, airport safety vehicles surrounded the aircraft. Then came the announcement no passenger expected. Everyone was instructed to leave the aircraft immediately. Confusion spread throughout the cabin as travelers hurried through the jet bridge carrying bags and frightened children. Outside, engineers carefully inspected the engine compartment Malcolm had identified. After several tense minutes, inspectors discovered that one of the access panels protecting critical hydraulic components had not been fully secured following overnight maintenance. During takeoff, powerful air pressure could have caused the panel to detach, creating serious damage that might have forced an emergency return or worse. The airport operations director personally thanked the captain for delaying departure. Then he asked one question. Who first reported the issue? The flight attendant pointed quietly toward Malcolm, who stood comforting Naomi while reassuring nervous passengers that everything would be all right. Within minutes, senior airline executives arrived. Several immediately recognized Malcolm from confidential aviation safety meetings they had attended years earlier. Their expressions changed instantly. They realized the quiet father whose VIP seat had been taken was one of the industry's most respected safety specialists. The airline president apologized personally for the treatment Malcolm and Naomi had received. He explained that company values demanded every passenger be treated fairly and respectfully regardless of appearance or status. Malcolm accepted the apology with kindness but gently reminded the leadership team that true respect should never depend on discovering someone's achievements. His words spread quickly among employees gathered at the gate. Many lowered their heads. The lesson reached far beyond one airline. Gregory, who had proudly taken Malcolm's seat earlier, sat silently nearby. Watching Malcolm comfort frightened families instead of seeking attention filled him with shame. He realized that while he had been demanding privileges, another man had quietly protected complete strangers without expecting recognition. Later that afternoon, after engineers completed repairs and certified the aircraft safe, passengers boarded again. This time the airline insisted Malcolm and Naomi occupy the original VIP seats they had rightfully earned. Even more meaningful than the upgraded seats was what happened next. Passengers throughout the cabin applauded as Malcolm walked down the aisle holding Naomi's hand. Not because he was famous. Not because he was wealthy. But because he had chosen responsibility over pride and compassion over recognition. Naomi looked up at her father with tears shining in her eyes. She whispered that her mother would have been proud of him. Malcolm smiled gently, knowing those simple words meant more than every award he had ever received. When they arrived at the aviation conference later that day, Malcolm accepted his safety award with the same humility he had shown throughout the morning. Instead of speaking about technical achievements, he dedicated the honor to everyday workers who quietly protected lives without expecting applause: mechanics, cleaners, engineers, flight attendants, and maintenance crews whose careful work often went unnoticed until something went wrong. His speech received a standing ovation because everyone understood its deeper message. Greatness is rarely loud. True character reveals itself not during moments of comfort, but during moments of disappointment. Malcolm could have argued over the seat. He could have demanded special treatment. Instead, he chose dignity. And because he remained calm, observant, and focused on helping others, an entire airplane of passengers returned safely to their families that evening. Months later, the airline introduced new employee training centered on fairness, empathy, and respectful customer service. Malcolm's experience became an anonymous case study used to remind staff that every traveler deserves equal courtesy, whether dressed in a business suit or carrying a worn backpack. Naomi kept her boarding pass in a small memory box beside a photograph of her parents. Whenever she looked at it, she remembered that her father had taught her the greatest lesson of all, that kindness is never weakness, humility is never failure, and doing the right thing when nobody is watching can change countless lives. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire so together we can continue spreading stories of hope, courage, and compassion. Special request: comment, kindness always wins. If you believe every person deserves respect, no matter how they look, where they sit, or what they own. As the golden afternoon sunlight stretched across the airport runway, Malcolm and Naomi looked out through the airplane window before takeoff. The same journey that had begun with disappointment had become a reminder that character will always outshine status. Seats can be replaced, wealth can disappear, and titles can fade, but a humble heart that chooses compassion over pride leaves a legacy no amount of money can ever buy. And somewhere high above the clouds, a little girl smiled, knowing her father had shown the world that the strongest people are not those who demand the best seat, but those who quietly make sure everyone reaches home safely.